Welcome back. Video number 2. Yes, the last video went fairly long, and I know most of you like shorts. And according to my algorithms, most people only watch these for like 10 to 12 minutes before they tune out. But I want to get in a little bit more as far as what's happened in the last 5 to 6 years on YouTube. We can even extend that back even further about the false information that you're getting and how individuals are actually getting paid to give you that false information. So hopefully on the board, I'm going to see if I can get the glare a little different here so you can see what I have drawn on the board. A little better. First of all, through the last 5 years, we identified some of the problems that were going on with flat tappet lifters. Okay, that investigation stemmed back to some of the experiences I had as early as 2002 within rebuilding, receiving a set of competition cam lifters with a cam kit from Summit Racing. Now, some of this information I'm sharing with you today because of videos that were released by Uncle Tony's Garage, Eric Weingartner, and some of the, I guess, the lesser known channels maybe. Old Roots Racer, Old Time Racer, so on and so forth. All of this investigation has occurred, and the OG, as kids say today, the original guys that kind of brought this up was Uncle Tony's Garage, myself drawing some of these things up, and the investigation that occurred, was it 5 years now, into the failure of flat tappets, and we got into our reasoning for it. Whether it be remanufactured parts being used or remachined, the hardening of the lifters, the camshaft hardening, the cam core designs, the lobe designs. From those initial videos, at least 100 YouTube creators have basically created a channel covering those topics, including Daniel Powell. Now, in a recent video, I do not follow along with Daniel Powell for multiple reasons. Daniel Powell has also supplied camshafts to Eric Weingartner for his LS, small block Ford, and now small block Chevy competition going out there. Again, with a range of approximately 4,500 to 7,000 RPM. And in Eric's most recent video realized that many of these custom cams are actually part numbers that you can buy off of Summit or Jigs Racing right off the shelf. Lo and behold, who imagined that? Because there have been decades of research put into it. So camshaft profiles have been tested in the millions, whether it be competition cams to Hudget or Hughes camshafts, Lunati, who we own all the rights to as far as their profiles go anymore, or at least my previous shop, we bought out the Lunati line of patents. So everything that we used in profiles were something out of the catalog from Lunati. All of these names being tossed out there. And it's, again, going back to a previous video by Uncle Tony's Garage, commenting on the neural pistons that he had seen something shared on Daniel Powell's channel concerning the knurling. If you haven't seen my previous videos, downloading right now as I make this one, please do tune into it, because if you understand and know history between the different performance industries, whether it be V8 racing of muscle cars, relating to some of the other technologies within motocross, whether it be 125 or 250 or even 500cc motocross engines, the advancement in piston and connecting rod technology comes from other industries. Okay? As a muscle car or hot rodder, we're trying to utilize equipment that was designed in the 1960s. Since then, technology has advanced dramatically, typically because of failures. When things break down or are starting to lose dependency, like flat tappets and their destruction, you have to investigate how things used to be done years ago compared to the quality issues that we're having as of within the last 20 years or so, and the new modern designs being incorporated into modern engines. So on the board, I have three categories basically drawn here. In the first column, I'm not picking on Chevy. This is just an example for discussion. The diameter of a flat tappet, whether it be an older engine to the new rollerized variation, the tappets fit in the exact same lifter bore. So it doesn't matter if you have a first generation small block Chevy or a fifth generation prior to LS, the lifters they shared the exact same bore. So you can take the mid 1980s to early 1990s retro hydraulic roller designs and drop them right into a first generation small block Chevy with some retaining bolt holes for the spider to keep them aligned. Now, there's been other channels covering the different manufacturers for rollers, whether it be hydraulic or solid, and the failure rates they've been noticing in their constructions, whether their rollers are using the needle bearings or if they're using a copper or brass bushing in order for the roller to ride on. Now, depending on how aggressive the ramp rate is or the design of the ramp, especially within a loft and how it's seating back down, is vindicated by the type of oil you're using, spring pressures, and RPM that the engine is revolving, how often it's maintained, so on and so forth. Even with the failure rates in flat tappets, individuals were switching over to the rollers. And even then the rollers are just presenting a new issue to the point where the rollers are failing, especially with your newer Hemi engines. You realize there was a different diameter used in the Chrysler engines than there was in the Chevys. The Chevys used the 904 lifter bore. That was carried over to the more modern day Hemi with their roller design. But because of lack of oiling or oil pressure within the lifter galley area, they were have frictional problems where typically the number one cylinder, which is the last in the line of oil supply within the pressure of the lifters, it started to fail. And if you modern day Hemi guys know exactly what I'm talking about, your number one cylinder tick. Multiple recalls and manufacturer issues coming from the lifters themselves. It wasn't necessarily the rollers, it was the actual supply to the lifter itself. So I'm going to give you a few examples here of things that I've learned through other legends in the performance industry, whether that's Jesel and their new modern engine design to the newest design that comes out of the camp at Mike Moran. They have adopted going to the larger diameter lifter. Okay, so Chrysler used the 904. The new modern variation from both Jesel and Mike Moran, they're going to an even larger diameter lifter bore. And instead of the lifters being tied together with tie links or spider guidance systems, or even like the LS Cup designs that keep the lifters from turning, keeping the rollers aligned with the camshaft, they're coming out with much shorter lifters. Okay, the bodies themselves are not only bigger in diameter, they're shorter, and they incorporate a much larger wheel, the roller itself. Some of these, the Jesel variation, you cannot install the lifters from the top down because the actual roller is a larger diameter than the actual lifter bore. Now, for anybody that's followed along with my videos for the last 4 years, you had mentioned in a previous build with the 3-teen Chrysler build, and I had mentioned that over the last 30 years, we always opted to go to the solid mushroom design that was actually incorporated from Volkswagen. So yes, Volkswagen provided a flat tappet mushroom lifter in a 904 diameter, but the mushroom head of the lifter was actually bigger than the bore of the lifter. So in that case, you would actually have to install the lifters from the bottom side up. You couldn't drop them in from the lifter valley. But the actual diameter of those feet of the lifters were to the point where they had just as much clearance as what the valves did in a wedge chamber. Okay, there's very small clearance in between the heads of the tulip valves in a inline design. The lifter pads were that big. They were 1 inch in diameter. So 904 lifter bore area, the foot pads of each one of the lifters was 1 inch in diameter. Now that requires custom camshafts. So yes, for multiple years we ordered custom cams from Hughes, and they were designed with a wider lobe on the actual camshaft. And because of the restrictions in local circle track racing, we were limited how much lift we could actually incorporate into the system. Okay, easy enough. The only way to increase horsepower is to increase the RPM of the engine. Now, for the 1990s and 2000s, when we were really big into stock racing, the limited lift for Chrysler engines was 485. The equivalent Ford could be about 465, and the Chevys were restricted to a 450 lift. So any of the technology within seat angles and so on and so forth, they were experimented with from all of the camps within circle track racing. Whether it be a 3-angle valve job to 5-angle valve job, 45 degree to a 55 degree, all of that was tested out and perfected during the 1990s. Now that's when cylinder head or intake porting was not allowed. It had to be factory stock, and even limiting us to a 500 CFM carburetor. We're still capable of achieving 450 horsepower, but it took us to actually have to spin 9,500 RPM in order to achieve that. So again, taking a stock LA engine, modifying it to be able to withstand 9,500 RPM, stock stamped steel rockers, you'll tell the amount of effort that we put into camshaft design, lobe design, duration, lobe separation angle, in order to create the most amount of power that we possibly could. Now the car, it's actually right behind the screen. I'm going to show you a little bit of my mess. Okay, that car there that I showed in previous videos is the car that we used during the 1990s and 2000s. And during that time, one of the area local legends within Dick Trickle was a racer here. The first time I ever got paid to actually turn wrenches, it was actually for Dick Trickle. Yes, I was only 7 years old. Long story short. But anyway, during that time and over the decades, I have learned the things that create power and the things that create durability. And out of that, I've also been able to be in the winner's circle multiple times. Over a 14-year racing period, the team of individuals I worked with owned 9 championships here in central Wisconsin, competed against individuals like Dick Trickle. We actually owned the local track records for 4 of the tracks here in Wisconsin for approximately 1 day. Okay, so we were competing with Dick Trickle in the super stock and late model racing during that time. Dick then moved on to the Arco series. So his Arco car the very next season, so like I said, one week basically we owned the track record. He came in with his Arca car, which was a much more modified small block Chevy engine, and he was able to reinstate his track record. And I believe it's owned by Hailie Deegan, who is actually in NASCAR in one of the lower syndicates right now. Hailie Deegan owns our track record here, so she's beaten us by a little bit. To give you a little reference, when we set the track record, we're the first ones in the 8th mile to get a 13.90. Dick Trickle had a 14.01. Okay, that new track record is now down to a 13.1. Okay, so almost a complete second taken off of the 8th mile oval track racing. Now, oval track racing isn't the only kind of cars that we built. We've built engines for all kinds of different racers, whether it be hot rods to NHRA Pro Stock type stuff. We've outsourced things to Sonny's Mountain Motors, Aries race engines, which is the Hemi heads. When the Sun got the new business back in the 1990s, he was equipping the Aries Hemi head from the earlier Hemi design onto the LS. We were the ones that did the research and development to do that. He has since kind of driven the company into the ground. He's not offering very much. We have done work for Paul Menard, who you guys will recognize in NASCAR. Paul Menard is part of the Menards construction equipment here in Wisconsin. My brother built the chassis for Paul Menard for all of his late models. We built the engines. So we had to build a limited amount of engines because NASCAR limited how many you could have or replace throughout the season. And he had to be number one between the 7 cars that Paul Menard and the Menards family had here in central Wisconsin. They were limited to 2 engines per car. 14 engines. And those 14 engines had to last them enough to go through a season and take the championships and win the Dell's $1 million race in order to pay for the entry into NASCAR. So yes, I've been along the ride. Some individuals have asked about my credentials. Again, folks, I don't want to toot my horn. I've been around for a while. I might not look that old, but I'm almost 50 now. I started turning wrenches when I was 7 years old. Before I even graduated high school, I was a AC certified master mechanic. Yes, before I even graduated high school. And immediately upon graduation, I started my own business. It took a long time, a lot of mistakes along the way, but I was able to become successful in my own eyes and multiple other racers. Now, the individuals that I used to race with are now the presidents of the racing associations around here. They are still competing to this day on circle track racing. Well, I've converted the Iron Man car into something to compete on any surface. Sorry to get off that little rant there, but let's go back to the discussions going on with multiple YouTube content creators right now, whether it be Uncle Tony's Garage, Daniel Powell, Eric Weingartner, the bunch, okay? Anybody that was associated with one of the drag racing associations, a drag racing event that takes place once per year, there was multiple YouTube content creators that started sharing their knowledge and their experience and sharing it with the world through YouTube. I've let go from most of those communities, and I still once in a while tag in and watch a few of them. When I hear the name Daniel Powell, now I don't want to get for defamation. I don't want to get another letter in the mail for cease and desist, because that's what I receive from some individuals. When I've come out and given you guys information that has stood the test of time, they have turned around and said, "Oh no, our experience now in the Southeast, in the Carolinas, or in Virginias, is allowing the racers down here to compete." Remember, folks, we still have individuals with modern technology and camshaft design, lifter design, that still have yet to beat Dick Trickle's times. Okay? Kenny Wallace, Rusty Wallace's brother, has even come out and stated that Dick Trickle is one of the greatest racers of all time. Even though he didn't make it very big in NASCAR, he owned short track racing in the United States for many years. I learned as much as I possibly could from him at a young age. I took the practices that he taught me and all of the transcripts from Mopar Performance or Direct Connection, because we mostly raced Dodge at the time. I was the first one that converted into Chevy. Okay. Now we have individuals that I was also partnered with that are specializing in Ford platforms. We can all communicate between all of us, no matter what the technology is, with old engines to modern ROC engines, even Toyota Racing. We're connected in some way or manner. Multiple individuals went to work for either Harley Davidson or Honda, to the point where instead of just being AC certified master mechanic, I went to UTI, Universal Technical Institute, and branched out from there to actually become an official Honda technician. So a lot of the technology they found, from two-stroke engines to their crotch rock engines, I would learn that information and bring it over to how we were building race engines for V8 muscle cars or circle tracks. And when I hear names like Daniel Powell, again, I can understand his thousands of viewers, whatever, that might be turning to him for advice as camshafts. I had said something quite a bit out, quite a few, maybe a year ago, calling him out and saying he's taking used camshafts, regrinding them so that it's presenting to his customers that they're receiving a new camshaft. Okay? He got argued with it. He created a video against me, calling me out, so on and so forth. So let's review. Let's not even talk about my experience. Let's talk about the performance industry as a whole. Professionals that get paid millions of dollars, not $1,000 here and there, or collect a few dollars from YouTube for their content. Let's talk about the billion-dollar corporation within racing and camshaft design. I had already mentioned companies like Jesel and their engine design. Mike Moran coming out with a completely different design of his own. Steve Morse has also got his SMX series that is based off of an LS platform with the modifications to make it easier for a racer to maintain their engines. When it comes to camshafts, we learned in the 1990s with steel cam cores. So forget the whole cam hardness and all that stuff with flat tappet cams. We learned in the 1990s that a small base circle, typically required to be used in a 400 small block when using different connecting rods, you had clearance issues. So the only way to clear the connecting rod and stroker combinations and the camshaft is you had to go to a small base circle. It didn't take us but one season to figure out that small base circle with the aggressive ramp profiles of solid roller cams would break down fairly fast. They would either wipe out the rollers, break springs, because of the loft and the seat down of the roller coming back down the camshaft. We found out fairly quickly if you were turning an engine over 6,500 RPM that you might last 1 or 2 weeks before you had to completely tear down the engine, or it was turned in for lackluster performance. The performance industry, including NASCAR. NASCAR was one of the very first organizations to go to a large, I believe it's 50 millimeter, I'm not mistaken, sorry, a large cam tunnel to where they can use a much larger cam core. Now again, in NASCAR, they're operating anywhere in that 6,000 to 9,000 RPM range. So the amount of time of loft, how the lifter is being seated back down, they also have to have the performance and endurance to last the entire race or a season, for that fact, out of their engines. They went to the large cam design. Nowhere in NASCAR are they using a small base circle camshaft. None of them. They use basically the same diameter of the cam core itself for the base circle of their cam lobe. So again, the cam profile, it still achieves the same amount of lift, but it actually multiplies the amount of duration that they can get. They're also converting to a very large lifter diameter. 1 inch. Okay, so it's just surprising that this technology is being practiced in elite racing. But YouTube creators, individuals in their garage grinding stuff for customers, they're using technology that's 30 years old. And they're being paid for it. Okay, everybody's got the ability. It's the capitalism once again in our nation, so on and so forth. But how long is an engine with that type of design lasting? Okay. Again, going back to the most recent announcement with Eric Weingartner changing over to a small block Chevy engine mule competition. Lo and behold, some of the cams that he's receiving, even multiple cams from the same individuals, are actually shelf cams from Summit Racing. Now, he shared two examples of the camshafts that he just received. One individual called in saying, "Hey, can I send in another one?" He actually had them directly shipped from Summit right to Eric Weingartner. One of them is a shelf part number, and one of them is another part shelf number, just from a custom listing. Okay, so they're not technically custom numbers; they're camshafts that are made in multitude. Now, pay attention to the duration, because the duration is in that 230 degree range, but the exhaust is 250. Okay. Eric mentioned something that was brought up by another YouTube content creator when he was still working for Hot Rod Magazine. You'll know the short little bald guy that I'm talking about. He's gone on to the point to put boost on every engine that he's testing. He used to be one of the promoters, one of the advertisers for the bootlegger camshaft from Lunati. Okay, so whether it be the competition cams, Mother Thumper or Thumper Series camshafts, to the Rattlers from Hughes, to the bootlegger camshafts, the biggest difference between them is their exhaust duration was longer, much longer, for a more aggressive exhaust note out the exhaust. For the typical show enthusiast going out there that want to have more of that deep tone, aggressive sound coming out of the exhaust. Is it necessarily advantageous to performance? Now, another individual that I've been incorporated with for multiple years, he's gotten into some really, really sporadic builds out there. First building a twin LS powered mud bogger. So one V8 engine powered the front axle and another one powered the rear. All incorporated and tuned by an area resident by the name of Jay Gilbertson. I grew up with Jay, grew up right down the road from our shop. He's been kind of my, that escalation of always competitive. He's always been the guy that I've always tried to go faster than, so on and so forth. He's a master technician for General Motors. He's had some health issues recently, but he's a genius when it comes to tuning. Okay, he's got the advantage there, folks. I don't tune nothing. Okay, I know the mechanical components of it. Now, the individual that built this mud truck also ended up building V8 powered snowmobiles. And the very first snowmobile he ever bought was actually an engine out of an older 350 out of my older Corvette. I had replaced it with something a little bit more high performance, so he had just that 190 horsepower 350. He put that in a snowmobile, and it only took him about a year before he replaced it with an LS. Put nitrous on it. The next year was turboed. He set world records with the thing. Okay, so if you want to do, I believe it's 192 miles an hour and 800 feet, folks. That was the world record at the time. That was another engine that we built. Now the chassis, the transmission, that was all configured by Mr. Ryan Cleary. So Ryan Cleary being on an Acusa, Jay Gilbertson being here in town. We're here in Central Wisconsin. We have so much talent. Okay, we have some outstanding individuals in this community when it comes to performance, or things that are just kind of out of the box odd. Now, out of those builds, we found out that a lot of the stuff and technology that is being shared through the catalogs or through Hot Rod Magazine was not necessarily true. And you have this short little bald guy once again going up there and saying, oh, here's the bootlegger, it's going to be additional sound. So at that time, this would have been approximately 2018 when Hot Rod Magazine started letting people go and started reducing their amount of publications, so on and so forth. The bootlegger was introduced into the industry. And at the time, again, the Thumper series was introduced, so on and so forth. It had been around for a while. We tested all of the entire series from Thumper. This was previous to us buying the Lunati patent rights to the camshaft designs. We researched, because once again, we started making our own camshafts. So we wanted to know, and if we're copying something, we don't want to have any kind of legal issues, so on and so forth. What worked and what didn't. And we tested the entire line of Thumper cams. We had equipped some of our personal vehicles with the Hughes Rattlers. And one engine specifically, we used a bootlegger. It was a big block Chevy. And what we noticed is that, yes, the exhaust note sounded meaner, okay, but it lacked dramatically on low end power. These cams were designed with first generation engines in mind. So if you're working with an engine that used cast iron manifolds and restricted exhaust, the the ulterior longer duration exhaust camshafts, they were the right fit for you for the average enthusiast, but they did not perform on the engine dyno. So again, folks, I'm almost running out of battery, so I'm going to end this one here. Realize that the best among us have figured out how to make more power and durability. While some are getting popular over preaching technology that's over 40 years old that we found out was a failure, and people are still paying for it. That's the point of the video. Why? Go and call me out on what I just told you, because now you're proving the elite in our racing industries wrong. I don't see you making $1 million deals. So with that, have a good one.